Any plans for this evening? Perhaps a game night?
Game over, man! It's game over!
Shut up. Play the game. Play it from your heart.
26 years ago, we started playing a little game. Now, we're all gonna sit down, we're gonna finish it.
And may the odds be ever in your favor.
And here we go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Dice Camera Action, a mashup podcast about board games and movies where cardboard meets the silver screen. Each episode we review a board game, and then if you're a cinephile you can stick around for an in-depth discussion about a movie with a similar theme. I'm Matt Cousineau, and today I have the Diced Onion himself, Joel Karpowitz. Welcome, Joel. How's it going?
Good. It's going pretty well. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah. Woke up with a little bit of a head cold today, and so I'm full of drugs, and hopefully that powers me through the episode. But as they say, the show must go on. So today, just to line up the episode, we're going to be doing some shout outs, talking about some games and entertainment that we've been digesting of late, and then we will jump into our main review, which will be Citizens of the Spark, one I'm excited to talk about, and then a really fun movie pairing this week. Probably have some interesting conversations around the movie from 1997, I believe, The Island of Dr. Moreau. So really excited to talk about that. I guess this episode the idea for this episode came up for me when you on the Gen Con recap episode talked about Citizens of the Spark, and I remember immediately looking up the art. As I do, I look at the images on BGG as people are talking about it, and the art jumped out to me immediately, and so as I looked into it further, I thought, the gameplay actually seems pretty cool, and so I ordered it. And then when it came in, just looking through the art, it kind of blew me away, and I thought, this is one of the coolest themes that I've seen in a board game, and in terms of art, right? It doesn't really, I don't think we'll get into it later, but I don't think it's a game where the theme kind of comes through in the gameplay that much. It does a little bit, but really it was just the colorful art and the anthropomorphized animals and all that I just thought was really striking. And then when it came in and I was looking at all the animals and all that, I immediately, the movie The Island of Dr. Moreau jumped into my head, and I thought, oh man, that could be a fun pairing. So looking forward to that.
That may say something about how your brain works, because this movie is so insane, and to pair it with this beautiful, lovely art, it almost feels wrong. So.
It's true. They are, in tone, completely opposites. But for more than anything, it was just an excuse to talk about the movie, because it's just such a fun topic. And I went down the Dr. Moreau rabbit hole years ago when I first watched it. I was like, this movie is bananas, and because I'm a cinephile, I always look into things a little bit further of how the movie was made or how it came to be, where did this idea come from. It turns out it's an H.G. Wells novel, which I didn't know at the time, and had forgotten again actually until I revisited the whole thing recently. But anyways, all that to say is that anytime a conversation comes up about this movie or anything like that, it's a fascinating topic, and I'm always talking to my friends and family about how this went, and all the Marlon Brando stuff and Val Kilmer, and came up again recently because Val Kilmer died, and so we end up in chit-chatting about his career and stuff like that. So we'll get into all that, but more than anything, it was just when I saw an opportunity or an excuse to podcast about that movie, I wanted to jump on it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's both are worth talking about for very different reasons, but I think both are exciting to talk about. So
agreed. Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's get into our shout outs then for the episode. So you want to get us started off, Joel, with something you've been taking in?
Yeah. So this is one that I don't know if someone has shouted this out in the past, because I didn't. It's a little bit older. But I finally caught up with it, and that is The Devil's Plan on Netflix.
I don't think it's been talked about on the show yet. No, so this is perfect.
Oh, For board gamers, this is a show to watch. It is a Korean reality TV show, and the theme is like very loosely the Devil's Plan is basically in the title and the opening credits, and that's about it. There's a mysterious figure who like gives games to people, but it's a game playing reality show. I'm not really a reality show fan at all very much. Sometimes I watch Survivor with my mother-in-law because she loves it, but like that's about the extent of my reality TV show. But this show is fascinating for a couple of reasons. First, as an American, right, I don't really know very much about Korean culture, and just to see the way the contestants interact is so different than like American reality TV. Not only cultural things like being very respectful of like age difference and things like that, but also just like generally being kind to each other, right? Like even though they're all competing for these things. What a weird concept. Yeah, it's crazy, right? They're all very kind of respectful and polite and things like that. And but the setup is there are games that the contestants play, and many of them feel like board games, right? There's maybe a larger scale, but sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's some of the games feel like they could be packaged and sold, and people would just enjoy them and things. But they have to kind of earn these different coins. I can't remember what they call them exactly. These little square medallions, basically. And like whoever has the most of those throughout the game, they might get special privileges. There are, secrets that they find in the house, all kinds of things. And then after the main game, whoever has the fewest, maybe they just call them chips. Whoever has the fewest, they have to go to prison, and then they fight for to see who's going to stick around and who gets booted out and things like that. And if any point during any of the games you run out of your chips completely, I think everyone gets like one to start, then you also get kicked out of the game. But the games are really fun. Like, they are complex enough that, this is not like, oh, it's tic-tac-toe, but we're using this other thing, right? Like, they are complex, like, rules-heavy games that require a lot of strategy. And in the first season, kind of the hook was that, like, all of the people have, like, really high IQs. They're very smart and things like that. And the second season, they don't lean into that quite as much, but they do always kind of make a point of, like, the intelligence and the, they have a Go master is one of the contestants and things like that. And, some reality TV stars, there's an American who is an actor and things like that. But they all are competing in these different things, and they're just really good. They're social games. There are, like I said, strategy games, like number-heavy games, all kinds of things. And it's just really compelling. So that is one that I had been slowly watching, and then finally had a chance this past week to finish season 2. And it's wonderful. I highly recommend it.
I heard amazing things, and it's gotten recommended to me a few times because, obviously board games. And I actually, so did you watch it dubbed or with subtitles?
I did watch it dubbed. That's mostly because often when I'm watching TV, I'll be doing something else and not like looking at the screen the whole time. So I watched it dubbed. I'm sure Netflix you can watch it subtitled if you want to.
Sure, yeah.
I don't love dubbed versions, right? The voices always don't quite fit the way that I want them to, but it's fine. I think overall it's good.
Yeah, as a general rule, like I watch a lot of foreign films and that sort of stuff, and as a general rule, like I do not watch stuff dubbed. I watch it with subtitles because I want that original performance, right? And it does require a little bit more effort and a little bit more focus, but that's just like worth it for the art, right? For me anyways. But for sure. So I tried to watch The Devil's Plan with subtitles. And I don't know if you remember the very first episode of the very first season, but they play an extremely convoluted, complex. Well, convoluted might not be the right word, but maybe it is actually. They play a very convoluted, complex version of werewolf or mafia or whatever.
Right.
And there's like lots of people. There's like a dozen of them or something, right? And the rules explanation is like a good 10 minutes, like which is like unheard of, right? Imagine watching an American American reality TV show where they're literally explaining the rules to a game on like with graphics, like a PowerPoint presentation for like 10 minutes. You lose your audience, right? And so I like, just as a rule, I've always just went subtitles. So I tried to do it subtitle, but then I'm like reading the subtitles, but the graphics are important, right, to help you understand the iconography and what's going on. So I'm like trying to do, and then like I got through it, and then I watched 10-15 minutes of them playing the game and had no idea what was going on at all. I was like, I am completely lost. And then I thought like, and then what happened is that I don't even remember, but I didn't finish the episode and I didn't continue. And since then it's been recommended to me a few times and been explained to me a few times. And I was like, man, that sounds amazing. And then I just thought, you know what, maybe I just have to make the sacrifice and watch it dubbed so that I can just understand what's going on. So
I think that's fine. It sounds funny to say, but like I totally hear what you're saying in terms of like watching a film performance where you're really like wanting to see the actor's performance and things like that. Maybe this is my like disregard in general of reality TV, because it seems weird to say like with the real people just watch the dubbed version. But like I think I do agree, right? You've got to kind of be seeing what's going on and things like that. And I think if you're not a native Korean speaker or not a Korean speaker, then I think the dubbed version works just fine for this one.
And these are not performances. You're not losing art, right? You're just maybe losing a little bit of nuance probably in terms of like the way they're emoting or the way they're saying things potentially. You're probably right. The dubbed version is probably way to go. I'll have to give it another shot because it's just too many times I've been recommended this and I just haven't done it yet. All right, so
absolutely. Speaking
of art and great performances, have you seen the? I think it was it Netflix or no? It was Amazon. It was Prime Video, of course. The new War of the Worlds with Ice Cube. I can't even say it without cracking a smile.
only the meme versions of this have I seen so far.
Then, you know what? You've seen it then. You've got it. You've seen it. I sat through it just for the lols, and for the memes of it. And I was told that it's one of those that 100% fits in the category of like a movie that was made in earnest, but is so bad that it's good. Like it's laughably bad. And I feel bad because these people like, I don't know if I want to use the word, poured their heart and soul, because it does not feel like something that anybody poured their heart and soul into. But people worked hard on it, and I'm just going to come on here and trash it. But ultimately, like, it's so bad. It's so bad that it's worth watching. And like, I'm like, English is my second language, right? Like I grew up speaking French in my home and stuff like that. And it's the same thing with my kids. So I don't know if you've noticed, but like a lot of times when I do my intros and stuff, my reading of like, long paragraphs is a little bit sometimes stilted. And like, it's a little bit not like, it just doesn't sound natural sometimes. And I noticed that when I'm like editing or whatever, I'm like, okay, like I can improve on that. And I feel like I have improved a bit, but like long story short, I don't read that fast. And when I'm trying to read a big paragraph and read it out loud or whatever, sometimes it's a little bit stilted and the nuances of the way a sentence should be said or that I mean it doesn't quite come out the way that I want to. And it felt like that's exactly what happened with Ice Cube in this entire movie. And because he's sitting there in front of a computer screen, I can almost guarantee that like he didn't have to learn any lines. All he has to do is sit there in front of the screen and like read his lines, right? And it's just like his performance is as bad as my like paragraph reading.
Here, let me show you. These locations are our global response headquarters, and they're taking them out one by one. Based on their prioritized destruction of these critical intelligence command centers, my analysis suggests...
But he's supposed to be this professional actor, and like I've seen Ice Cube put in some decent performances. I would never call him a great actor, but like he's capable. But ultimately, I think what happened here is that like, he's in a, like they made this during the pandemic. and they just had a bunch of people sitting in front of computer screens, and they had a little bit of like location acting, but it was mostly just like faces on screens, right?
Right.
I don't, do you know the premise of how they decided to tell the story?
No,
No, not even. Okay, so you're probably losing me a bit. So I probably should have said off the top, but the premise of this version or this telling of the War of the Worlds is that Ice Cube is a Homeland Security, works for the Homeland Security, government, United States, whatever. And so his job is to sit in front of a computer and like do like national security stuff, right? Well, he's doing that during the alien invasion of War of the Worlds.
Okay. Seems like that could be a promising setup for something, right?
Sure, yeah, and there's been some successful films that are like, I forget what it's called, like Screen Life or something. I think they named the genre. There was a horror movie made called Host during the pandemic, which is excellent.
It's
and I
really
think
good.
It's like 80 minutes or something. Like it's super short.
Yeah.
But it's really, really good. I think it might even be an hour. Like it might be like 50 something
That's what
minutes.
I thought, like 67 or something like that.
Yeah. So anyways, like that was really good. Then there was like Searching, and there were two on Netflix that were about like finding a missing person or an abducted person or something. They're both really good. So there is a little bit of a track record of this like genre working. But all that being said, that's what this is, like War of the Worlds, but it's on a computer screen, and he's like able to like track what's going on, and he's sending people in the field to go and do stuff. And it's just really bad. The performances are not good, and it really, really feels like an ad for Amazon. Like, there's literally a moment where he has to get a USB key from A to B, point A to point B. And so he literally goes on Amazon and you see him click through and order it. And then his son-in-law is a delivery driver for Amazon. And
does he say something in the process like, "Oh, this is so fast and easy," right?
Pretty much. So he's working with his son-in-law to deal with this alien invasion, and his son-in-law's an Amazon driver. And
sure, that's who you want on the front line of an alien invasion.
For sure,
delivery drivers. Yeah.
So he's like, I got to get a USB key because the solution is that they're going to put a virus on it and then infect them or whatever, right? They're going to do the Independence Day thing. So he's like, I'm in a Homeland Security head office. We're not allowed thumb drives here. You know what I mean? So that's kind of their thing. So it's like, okay, I'll get you one. Just, you have to order it on Amazon. So like literally they order it on Amazon, and then he puts it in a drone, and the drone and the like Amazon drone delivery saved the world. So anyways, honestly, 100% worth watching. It's not super long, and it is a hoot for all the wrong reasons.
I don't know, man. Life feels pretty short to spend 2 hours.
That's fair.
Ice Cube's screen-locked War of the Worlds.
Yeah, that's
brought
fair.
to you by Amazon.
I literally watched it, I think, over the course of like a week, like 20 minutes at a time or something, because I couldn't bring myself to sit there for like whatever, an hour and a half, 2 hours to watch this whole movie. So when I had like a little bit of time or like whatever, I would just pop it on in the background or whatever.
Yeah, you're really selling
right
it there. I couldn't sit through it, but you should watch.
You should watch it. All right. So let's move on here. Like you have something else you wanted to shout out here?
I do. Yeah. So this is one my wife and I are watching just like right now, and so this may end up being a bad recommendation because I know this show was canceled after one season, but we're about 3/4 of the way through the season, and we're really enjoying it. It's very sort of goofy in like an 80s vibe. It's a show called Hysteria, and it's on Peacock. The premise is that this high school kid, it opens with this girl and her boyfriend kind of making out on the bed, and it's set in 1989, and these two guys in masks break in and kidnap them and take them and throw them in a van. And then the main character in the show seems to be, or at least he's kind of presented for a while as the main character, is this, kind of teenager who's not popular at school and things like that, but he's in a band with his friends and they, play like metal and things. And through a series of events, they decide, what will get us some more like publicity and some people to like pay attention to us is if we kind of bring in like a Satanist theme to our band. And so they start like doing these performances and things like that. And at the same time, it seems like there's something really going on in the town with like Satanists and things like that. So it is a horror comedy because it's very entertaining. I mean, it's funny. It's not like, heavy on the comedy, less on the horror, right?
Okay.
Because the horror is like...
Is it campy?
Kind of campy, yeah. That's a good way to do it. It's like tapping into in the U.S., right? These 80s, the satanic panic stuff, right? Of like, oh, what's going on in our community? What are our kids into? They're all really devil worshippers, and so he's kind of leaning into that. But at the same time, everybody, because there is something weird going on in the town, everybody's suspicious that like it is real. Maybe it is real. Like you're not quite sure as the audience, like what's causing what and what. Some things have logical explanations, some things don't. So it's been very fun. It's like Bruce Campbell plays the sheriff in the town, right?
That's why I asked, because I saw him in I looked up the images as you were chatting and I saw Bruce Campbell. So I'm like, there's got to be some level of camp there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And Julie Bowen, who is the mom from Modern Family, she's the mom of this kid. And one of the actresses from Pitch Perfect. Those are the three faces that I've seen before, and then just a bunch of mostly like young people and stuff like that. But it's very enjoyable, and we've got a couple episodes left, so I'm hoping that it will, since I know it was canceled, I'm hoping that it will at least resolve some of the plot lines and things satisfactorily. But we're enjoying the watch, right? It's September, October, we always, want to watch some horror stuff, and so this is one we're enjoying quite a bit right now. So, Hysteria. Yeah. I don't think it's probably a great show, but it's a pretty entertaining show. It's better than War of the Worlds, I think. So, I'll say that.
Low bar. Cool. So on Friday, Jason's they have like a church cafe at their church. It's like a whole separate area, but basically it's just like set up as like a board game cafe. And so they do events, I think every Friday night or every other Friday night for board gaming. So I often find myself there just playing games. They did a flicking event, a flicking themed night where they had like this like huge epic version of Flick 'em Up, which was really cool to look at on the table. I showed up late, so I wasn't there for the Flick 'em Up part, but I saw the like setup and I'm like, man, that looks cool. I'd never played a flicking game before in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then so they were done with that, and there was a couple of groups playing Crokinole. And so I got invited to sit down and play a game of Crokinole, which I had never done before. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a Canadian invention from like the late 1800s. So
I think that's right. Yeah.
I feel like I should have played that. And apparently pretty big.
Where's your national pride, Matt?
Like, I know.
What are you doing here?
I don't know. I'm too busy playing hockey and curling or something. So played my first ever game of Crokinole and fell in love with it instantly. Like, it was super fun, and there's like obviously there's some skill there involved, but there's also a good amount of like actual strategy, right? Of like where you're trying to leave your buttons, I guess they're called, out of easy reach for the next shooter and stuff like that. So fell in love with it immediately and asked a friend there if I could borrow their board and bring it home because I wanted to show my kids. Charlie and I, and a little bit with Remy too, we've been playing Crokinole a lot the last week or so, and having a really good time with it. So, so I'm gonna probably try to look to get my own Crokinole board. My dad's a woodworker, like a really good woodworker, so I might see if he can make us a nice like custom homemade one.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be super cool. I love Crokinole. I can't even remember what the circumstances were, but I ended up getting a deal on a board and introduced it to my wife, and it's one of her favorites now for sure. And
nice.
The great thing about those boards is like they are wall art also. Ours isn't even fancy, but it just still looks cool hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
So they're very cool for sure. Cool. Well, I wanted to briefly also give a shout out to a game I played a couple weeks ago. It's been a few weeks now, and it was one that I thought I didn't really want to play very much. I kind of complained through half the game because it's got some mechanisms that aren't my favorite and things, but I ended up really liking it, and that is Brink from Ivy Studio. The thing that kind of turned me off to the game at first is there is some elements of like negotiation and things.
Right.
I'm really bad at negotiation games. Like I never feel confident in the game because I'm always like, oh, if they're agreeing to this trade, this was probably not a good deal. I'm struck here. Waves of self-doubt coming over me whenever I play a negotiation game. But it's a really kind of cool little game where there's kind of some worker placement. You have these 3 different types of ships that you're placing out, and the types of planets that you place them on or that you're connecting to give you different opportunities and things to, gather different resources or to, gain influence in certain areas and things like that, or to, add new cards to a tableau that you've got that might give you some ongoing abilities and things like that. And then at the end of each kind of round, there's this opportunity where everyone is going to secretly do some bidding on it's bidding on like which faction is going to be a scoring faction, right? So you have these different colored factions, and everybody can you have a little sheet that has all the factions, and you put on there how many kind of votes you want for that faction, but those are also the resources that you have in that faction. So you may spend a lot of them, but then you don't have any at the end of the game that you'll be able to score with. So you got to kind of manage that a little bit, and then the scores at the end of the round. Sorry, not the end of the game. Those scores are multiplied then by how much influence you've been able to gather in that faction as well. And so all that kind of hidden bidding and there's, like I said, there's a trading element. All those things are things that usually kind of turn me off to games a little bit, but it ended up being really fun. And part of the reason it was fun, this is gonna sound ridiculous, and everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, that's why you liked it." I ended up winning the game, but it wasn't because of that I liked it. It's because I had felt kind of locked in for the first half of the game, like, "Oh, this is what I need to be doing, and I'm not doing it well." And then the last couple of rounds of the game, I was like, "Wait a minute. There are other strategies available here." And so since I'm bad at this piece over here, I'm going to really try and lock in on these elements that are also high scoring. You can upgrade your ships, right? You can gain these ambassador cards. And I was able to do really well with that. And so I went from thinking, oh, it's just this kind of game that you have to play in this way, to realizing oh no, there are some other strategies here that ended up being really rewarding and things. So I ended up liking it, and my friend who he had backed it on Kickstarter and things, and I'd been giving him a hard time. I was like, oh, this is going to be so annoying. I had to admit at the end, I was like, all right, I ended up really liking that. He's like, yeah, because you won, and I'm like, no, it's not the only reason that I like.
You sit on a throne of lies.
So it was a lot of fun, and I don't know if you've played any of the Ivy Studio games, but they're always incredible productions.
Yes,
so
I have not played them, but they've often been on my radar just because of how beautiful they are. But yeah, I definitely need to do it. Similar barrier to you. Anytime it comes to bidding, trading, auctions, anything like that, it often is very, very group dependent. So depending on who you've got at the table with you, and how comfortable you are with those people, it could be easily gets awkward. And so for that reason, among others, I've not kind of gone to the brink. But I do want to check out these games. Moonraker seems really cool. The theming is right up my alley. It looks great. It's well rated. There's no reason for me to not try it, right? So definitely should do that. Yeah.
Makers for me, that was another thing, was a little bit of a miss. I enjoyed it okay, and the people I played with really liked it, so that shouldn't dissuade you just because it didn't work for me. But Fractured Sky, which is another one of theirs, that one I really like, and I've played that with a few different groups, and it's always I've always found that a really interesting one. It does have a hidden bidding thing, but it's I don't know, I found that one really neat. That's probably my favorite of their games. But
often are better when the bidding is on guardrails is the word I'm looking
Yeah.
for. Whereas like if a game is like totally open to just bid or pay or whatever you want, then sometimes you just like, if you don't understand the value of things fairly quickly, you could easily end up like way overspending on something or under like, whatever, and it just goes badly. But a game like Furnace, for example, where like it is bidding, but you have 3 discs, you have a 3, a 2, and a 1. Those are your options. So that one is an extreme example of being, having like these crazy guardrails, because you can only do that. But like if, and I believe Fractured Sky is like that as well, right? You have like specific tokens that you can use to, like, it's hidden under a magnetized thing or something, right?
Yeah, and the total you can play out in the total you can play out in that one is something like a 9 value or something total spread over 3. So if I'm going to play like 7 on this one, then I only have like a 2 and a 1 that I can use for these other 2. And it's area majority versus like just straight like points and things like that, right? Like you're trying to get the most strength, and there's other ways you can build strength. That's my favorite of the IV Studio games that I've played so far, but I have to admit, Brink was more fun than I was giving it credit for. I had a good time with it.
Very cool. So those are our shout outs for the episode. I want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, BoardGameBliss.com, which is honestly where I've been buying games for years. This isn't some random ad read. They're literally the only people I reached out to because I already love what they do, and I was relieved when they said yes so I could be fully genuine when endorsing them. They've got a huge inventory of games and are always super competitive price-wise, which is important to me. At Board Game Bliss, we believe in the magic of play. Board games spark joy, forge connections, and create unbelievable moments. We source exceptional titles from around the globe, so your table always has something exciting to offer. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, there's always a new favorite waiting to be found. Go to BoardGameBliss.com and find out why they're my personal favorite place to buy board games. All right, so we'll get into our Citizens of the Spark review. So the theming is that it started out as an undeveloped planet full of animals, and a mysterious transmission came upon the planet, gifting the animals with a spark of intelligence and a burst of technological advancement that eventually developed into like an egalitarian utopia. But in recent years, our society was disrupted by a hidden message discovered in the transmission, prophetizing of a single city that would rise while all others would crumble to dust. So each player in Citizens of the Spark kind of takes the role of one of these cities, and you're trying to make your city, you're trying to fulfill this prophecy, right? By making your city the best, because you don't want to be one of the ones that ends up crumbling to dust. So Citizens of the Spark was published in 2025, so it is a brand new game. I believe it was released at Gen Con. Was that its first release, as far as you know?
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's about right. It might have been Origins a little earlier in the summer. I'm not totally positive, but around then. Right?
Yeah, I first heard of it from you, actually, again, when you kind of came back from Gen Con. We did our Gen Con recap episode. So it was designed by Philip DeBerry and art by Diego Sa. It plays 1 to 5 players in 45 to 60 minutes. The BGG weight is approximately 2.23. Which is probably about right. And the BGG rating currently is at 7.6, though it is a fairly low number of ratings so far, being a brand new game. It has under 400 ratings, so we could easily see that, I think, maybe even go up a little bit. Like, for me, that seems a touch low. But like we might see that change a little bit over the next year or so as the game kind of settles into our hobbies as zeitgeist. So you spent a bunch of your time at Gen Con explaining how this game works. So I'm going to hand over the reins to you. You can give us, we obviously don't have to go into the nitty gritty, but give us a general overview of how the game plays.
Yeah. So in this game, there are a ton of different decks of cards that you can use. Each deck is 10 cards of one animal type, and you put together a certain number of decks based on player count. I think it's between 7 and 10 of those decks. Shuffle them all together. Each player starts with 2 cards, and then you have 3 rows of cards in front of you, and the size of those rows, again, is a little bit dependent on player count. On your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to choose one of those rows of cards and take all of them and put them in your city, right? And so based on how the cards play out, you could have multiples of one type of card or whatever the case may be. And you stack those cards kind of vertically so you can see the top of each card and then the bottom of, or the full card that's at the base of the stack, right? And then you're going to choose to activate one of those cards. Well, it's optional, but like usually you're going to activate one of the cards in your city. So you take that card, and the action of the card is described, but like the strength of the card or the kind of multipliers that are on the card, all those sorts of things are determined based on how many of that card type you have in your city. So either a 1, 2, or 3. You can have more than 3 of a card type, but at that point, it still is just going to activate at the 3rd level, right? So you do your activation, and then there's a follow mechanism where everyone around the table, if they have that same animal type in their city, can choose to activate their card, and they'll do the strength at whatever strength they have in their city. And so it goes around the turn like that until the deck runs out, basically, right? And that's, I believe, the end game trigger and things. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'll keep it right there because I want to save kind of some of my thoughts on these mechanisms and stuff for when we get to the pros and cons and things like that. But it's very simple, very straightforward. That 2.23 rating, I think, or weight is just about right, I think, for what you're doing there. And the game can vary some in complexity based on what are the animal cards that you've chosen in the decks, right? Because there are some that are very simple interactions, some that get more complex as you choose different types of animals. The game can kind of find new ways to get those to work together and things like that.
Yeah,
That's how I do.
Yeah, good. Well done. Congratulations. So there are 30 of these different characters, I guess, or citizens, I believe they're called. And as you said, each of them come with a stack of 10 of them that you kind of shuffle together. They all do different things, right? And there's a handful of different like keywords or iconography that they all kind of lean into. So there's a way that you can attack, which often involves like stealing a card from an opponent, stealing X amount of sparks, which is the victory points, or making them discard a certain amount of cards and that sort of thing. And then there's a reaction one where if you're being targeted before that attack takes place, you get to make your reaction, which is often just like either gaining sparks or getting a free character off the top of the deck and different things like that. There's ongoing abilities. There's abilities that when you place the card for the first time, they trigger. There's end game abilities, all kinds of different things. So you can imagine the way in that like these 30 different decks kind of interact with each other when depending on the characters that you choose. And one thing that I thought was really cool that I didn't discover until my very last play of this was that on the back of the rule book that I'm looking at now, there's recommended card sets, which is really cool. So for your first game, depending on the player count, they're recommending that you play with the advisor, the bandit, the champion, the outcast, the rancher, the scientist, and the scout, right? And then if you're playing in 3, 4, 5 players, you're going to add the merchant, warrior, or diplomat, respectively. And then there's like recommendations for a short game, a low interaction game, a high interaction game, one that focuses on converting citizens, which is a mechanism we don't have to get into. Some that are focused on guild icons, because there's these like tags at the top of each card that are either like leaning towards construction or towards diplomacy or towards war. There's these like little sword symbols, etc. So and then the cards will reference those, right? Like it'll say like take a card from an opponent who has less swords than you, for example. There's just more of a strategic one and then more of a tactical recommendation. So really cool, the variety that you can get into. So I remember on the Gen Con recap episode, you had basically only played that like first game recommendation, or at least you had played a ton of that at Gen Con, because you were dealing with people who were just playing the first game, right?
Right,
So
right.
have you dug into it further and played with a lot more characters at this point?
Yeah, I have. Not as much still as I want to,
Sure,
which,
yeah.
maybe is a spoiler alert on how I feel about this game. But, yeah, I've been able to play it a few more times since then. And I've been able to play the solo mode a little bit, which I may talk about a bit at some point. And, one of the mechanisms that was new to me in one of my games that you kind of mentioned there but didn't go into was the conversion.
Yeah,
and I think
neat.
the conversion is super cool
It
because
is.
conversion is often either maybe from the deck or maybe from your city. You'll turn a card over and then you can add it to any stack that you want, which is great because you can power up a thing that you're like, oh, I know I want to do this. But if you play out the last card and all you have left is converted citizens, you lose that
Right.
whole category altogether. So there are some good management choices that you're having to make there in terms of oh, I really want to boost this up so I can take it at a level 3, but if I over boost it and then run out of those cards, I lose it altogether. And so kind of a balance act that I think needs to work there. I think that was a really cool mechanism in the gameplay also. So
it is really cool.
That's just one example.
Yes, yeah. And I'm not sure we mentioned it, but we talked about the cadence of a turn, right? So first you decide you recruit citizens, I think it's called, or attract citizens. Mm-hmm. So you take all the citizens from one row and you put it into your city. Then you may activate one of your citizen stacks, right? And again, as depending how many citizens are in that stack, the more powerful the action is. But when you do that, you take the top citizen from that stack and you put it in the center of the table to be this is the action that I'm taking. And then everybody gets to follow, and if they do, they take their citizen of the same type and put it in the middle of the table. And then there's a cleanup phase at the end where all of the cards that are in the middle, for the person who started the action and the followers, all go in the discard pile. So you lose one of your citizens from the stack that you're activating. So that's kind of a neat balancing mechanism because it's set up in such a way that you can find a something that you can abuse, right? Like an action. If you're set up in such a way that you have more XYZ than everybody else and this action's really strong right now, you can do it, but you can only do it so many times in a row because that action gets dwindled down unless you find more citizens to put in that stack. So that's a really nice balancing mechanism that I appreciate too.
Yeah, and I think it encourages you to play kind of broadly in a lot of ways because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? Even though you're oh, well, if I get all these end game scoring or whatever it is, then nobody else will get them. But that also means you can't follow anybody else, right? And so you're always managing you want breadth, but you also want depth in some that you can score a lot from, which I think is really cool there for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of a hidden kind of a low-key really important thing that's almost hidden in the gameplay of it that you discover as you go, but the action economy is really important, right? If you as you said, put all your eggs in one basket and you can never follow anybody else's actions, but everybody else is following each other's and your action, you're doing less actions than everybody else. And so yes, diversifying and getting a good number of citizens on your board so that you can take advantage of following when you can or when it makes sense. That's something I discovered probably in my second or third game, right? Where you're you really should diversify if you can. Not that that's the only strategy, you can probably, and because again, there's 30 of these characters or citizens and you're going to play with 7, 8 or 9 of them every game. So depending on the setup, there are probably some scenarios where you can focus more on one thing than others, but generally speaking, being able to follow and taking advantage of that action economy is going to be really important.
Yeah, it's fun. Some of the I was thinking, as you said, I played a lot of that first game scenario, and one of the things I don't think this game is actually very good at is the storytelling, right? These citizens are beautifully illustrated. But I don't really get a sense that I'm in a city here or anything that, right? But you can sometimes kind of create your own little narrative with some of those actions that are being taken. So in the starting setup, I remember there's the outcasts, and outcasts give you negative points at the end of the game.
Oh, right.
And then there are scientists, and scientists allow you to get rid of a card. And so, it became this hilarious thing is gonna send my scientist to work to, I don't know what he's doing to those outcasts over there, but like they're gone after this, right? So a little bit of Dr. Moreauvian there, I would say.
Definitely.
So you can get some fun that way, but like it's really, I think, in the gameplay that this shines more than like the theme.
Sure, for sure. The last game that we played just a few nights ago, we played the high interaction game. With the right people, super fun. Because we had a blast with it, right? And as long as you're with people that don't mind getting their stuff messed up, right? And so there was like the executioner, the medic, the outcast, the soldier, the traitor, the tyrant. Just by the names of these, you get an idea of what they do, right? And so, the outcast was in there as well, the one that you mentioned that. The outcast, it was in there, and that's one that you mentioned where if you have a bunch of them at the end of the game, they will score you negative points per citizen in your town. Well, we're also playing with a trader. Well, the trader allows you to trade people from your town, your city, with people from an opponent's city. So like these outcasts were constantly being sent around the table from my board to your board to, and then basically it's sort of ended with a situation where I wanted to make sure that I had traders for the end game. So I made sure that I stacked up my traders and I kind of didn't touch them until the end game. And then on the very last action, I was set up in such a way where if somebody were to trade me their outcasts, I could just follow and trade them back. And so that basically edged me out and got me a win by like not very many points. So it was a fun interaction. So those are the types of games, right? Like that's one style of game that we played, which I think is really neat. Like you could play a low interaction game where it's more of a head down, everybody's doing their own puzzle, and you're just trying to like be more efficient than your opponents, right? So there's lots of different styles of games you can play within this system, and it is ripe for expansions too, right? Like there's no reason they can't just continue to make more citizens, which is really cool. So I'm looking forward to that.
They will. I know there was a promo deck that had like two new citizens or something like that. So I've got to assume that's assuming it does well for them, which I really hope it does. That will be. How easy to just add like here's 6 more factions, right? Toss them in the box and things like that, and and I love that one that they give you that guide to say like, hey, try this kind of game and see what works, because I think the choices that you the way that you're playing and the kind of strategies you're looking at change based on those cards. And so every game feels a little bit different. I mean, not when I play the starter set, 30 times or whatever in 2 days, but like every other game, like trying to figure out like, oh, wait a minute, these 2 cards interact really well together. I do kind of want to focus on these 2 areas or these 3 areas and maybe not worry quite so much, because that'll allow me to do this at strength 3, which is going to, just get so many points or whatever. So I think I love that. I mean, it's such as I was thinking about this, I just posted about it today, kind of.
I saw that,
a little bit. I played some solo, just kind of in preparation for this a little bit more, and it reminded me of something like Dominion, right, where they can just keep adding new decks that add new twists or new kind of mechanisms and things like that could just like really take off. So I think that would be awesome.
Cool. So let's hear about the solo. I am not a solo player, so you'll never hear me talking about a solo game. I'd like to for our solo audience out there, you could give us an idea of what it's like.
Yeah, I'm hit or miss on solo. I either like a solo that's like really, really fast and simple, or that's going to be like a big all-day affair. And this isn't either of those, but I really actually like it still. It's about as fast as the regular game is, which we haven't talked about, but like that's another thing I think is great about this game is that time on the box, 45 to 60 minutes, is accurate. And it's accurate whether there's 3 players or 5 players, right? Like, or 2 players or 5 players. Like it moves the whole time because of that follow mechanism. You're always taking turns as much as possible. So in the solo game, basically alongside those 3 rows of cards, you set up these little markers, and then there's a deck of cards called the Scintilla deck that manages the AI or manages the solo opponent. And it's very simple. You flip a card, you kind of take the cards from the row that it shows the symbol of, you add them to the stack, and then you don't activate the card action, right? You do whatever the scintilla card says.
Okay.
And it's often things like, take from this top row, get rid of a card, and they'll get 8 points if there are 2 cards in that stack, and 12 points if there's 3 cards, or whatever the case may be, right? And then you can still, as the player, follow, and you follow not the scintilla action, but the card. So
okay.
their little stack of cards, right? The one that they activated, you can follow that citizen action, even though they haven't technically taken it. So as a result, it moves super fast, right? Then whatever row was activated, you move that to the end of the line, move everything up, so that if the same symbol comes up the next time, it's a different citizen stack that's activated. So it's very fast, it's very easy, and really the most challenging part is just building that scintilla deck, because there's like 8 or 10 kind of base cards, and then you add a different card for whatever the citizen decks you're playing with are. So like if you're playing with the outcast, there's a card you add in. If you're playing with the scientist, there's a card you add in. Okay. So it's really straightforward. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm not a huge solo player, but this was one where I was like, no, I could actually see myself playing this a little bit more frequently, because again, it's fairly efficient and moves quickly once it's set up and things. And it was challenging also. Didn't feel like a walk in the park or anything like that. And there are some variable things in the rule book to make it a little bit more challenging, which I did not look into too much yet, because I just played once or twice there. So
sure. Have you played much or at all at 2 players?
No, I haven't played much at 2 players. That's probably one that I would like to see how that player count works. I know with those lower player counts, I think 2 and 3, the rows of cards only have 2 cards that are added to them rather than 3, which is the case for the higher player count values. So, and you play with fewer citizen decks. So, but I can't say whether that's. Have you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, my first time I played was with my friend Steph. I want to say we played 3 or 4 games back to back. And though I enjoyed myself, I kind of discovered that the game can fail depending on what decks come out at which player count. And I haven't seen it even come close to failing at 3 or more player counts. When I say fail, like it still worked. I'll describe what happened, but at 3 and 4 players, I think there's enough stuff going on and following, and there's enough like push and pull between the players where a person can't necessarily run away with it. Or if they do, or if you see that happening, then the other players can, as long as it's a game with some interaction, the other players can like target that person and try to pull them back a little bit, right? But what ended up happening with Steph and I in a 2-player game is in the game that I quote unquote said failed, is that and we did it randomly, right? We had played 2 games, we played the introduction games, and then we thought, like, let's just go pick random stuff. So we shuffled the deck, we pulled out whatever it was, 7, I think, citizens. And there ended up being a lot of high interaction ones. And so there was at least 3 or 4 that moved cards around or destroyed cards. So it either like traded cards with your opponent, traded cards with the what do you call the market in the middle of it? There's a name for it. It doesn't matter.
I just call it the card rows. Yeah,
the market. Let's call it the market. So you could trade cards with an opponent. You could trade cards with the market, or force your opponent to discard X amount of cards. And then we also had the poet, which the poet allows you to go and take cards off the bottom of the discard pile and put it. No, I don't think the poet is that. Anyways, there's a character that lets you take cards off the bottom of the discard pile and put it into your city. And so, in not understanding not really understanding how all of these characters really work together, or the pace of the game and all that. Early in the game, I had just like done something, and then Steph had used, I forget which character it was, the medic. It's the medic that I'm thinking of. So she had 3 medics, which allowed you to take 4 cards off the bottom of the deck and put it into your city, off the bottom of the discard pile. So she had a huge card advantage super early, which I was like, oh, wow, that's really strong. And so there were 2 or 3 cards in the deck that were end game scoring only. and 2 or 3 cards in the deck that were all about trading and destroying. And all of those things are like you may trade with or have an opponent destroy or whatever if you have more icons than your opponent, or do this to an opponent if they have less icons of this type than you. Well, she immediately had more icons of every type than me right away. And there was no way for me to crawl back into it, because every time I tried to do a trade or tried to regain an advantage, she was able to follow and reverse basically what I had done. So I will just say that if you're playing this game with 2 players, try to play a low interaction. Try to use the low interaction characters, because it's just a situation where whoever managed to get the early card advantage, the early kind of like city advantage in icons or whatever, it's really, really tough to catch up. So that's the only kind of like negative that I've found with this game in terms of like the gameplay itself. Is that I just had this one weird, and it may be a super niche, right? 2 players, very specific set of cards. So I would just be cautious with that if you're thinking about picking this game up or getting it to the table. I don't know if you've had any of those sorts of experiences at all. Or
I haven't really. I know there are several citizen types that are underlined, and there's a recommendation that's like don't use more than, I think, 3 or 4 of the underlined ones.
That's right, yeah.
But I haven't been I haven't seen it fail like that before. But I totally hear what you're saying, right? Like, that's one of the challenges. When you have multiple people, it's easier to be like, well, this person's beating me, but I have more symbols than this person, so I can...
Yeah, there's other people to target or...
do something. Yeah. That sounds like a convergence of all terrible events. So.
Yeah, and I remember about halfway through that game thinking, like, you know, I had done an action, and because it was only our second or third game, I had done an action that kind of like, I felt like I'd gotten back into it. Okay, like we've got, you know, a relatively even amount of cards. I'm back in it. And she's like, okay, I'm going to follow that action, and just literally reverse what I did. And that's the moment where it clicked and I went like, oh, like I cannot get back into this game.
Yeah.
It's not doable because there was a weird combination of high interaction cards with only end game cards. So the other cards that maybe I could have tried to lean on are just end game cards. So I'm just collecting them maybe for end game points, but otherwise, like, they're not doing anything in the game to try to like catch up or regain or whatever, right? So it was interesting. And I do remember at that point too, because I had just read the rule book, that like don't pick so many characters with underlined characters or whatever. So I went and looked. I'm like, oh, I bet you we screwed up, and we hadn't. I looked at the cards and we were fine. I think we had two or 3. So we're still under that recommended level or whatever. So. But that was my only negative gameplay. I've played this game 8 or 9 times now, and I've had a really good time all the other times. So I would just say, like, if you're playing 2 players, try to stay away from like having lots of high interaction citizens in the deck, because it could end up being a kind of a weird setup that way.
My main negative is more of a princess complaint here than anything else, which is that I do not like that you are constantly making change in this game. You're constantly getting points, the sparks in like 2 or 3 point values, right? And so you're constantly having to be like, okay, I'm counting up 5 and turn them in, or 10 and turn them in, right, to get these bigger values. I wish that they had just given each player like a tracker where you could be like, I'll go up this track, now I've got 10, so I'll move my 10s marker up and I'll keep going up, right? Because it's not, I mean, like I said, this is very much a princess complaint here. This is not a big issue, but like, I do find the more I play it, the more I'm like, I feel like I'm just constantly shuffling these tokens around, and you need to be able to do that, right? Because, as I said, you're often being like, well, all I can do here is get 3 points or whatever, and you're going to get the points if you can. But like, I do find it a little bit annoying, especially with a lot of players where, you know, there's just not enough tokens to keep that everybody forgetting. If people are forgetting to do that, and it's like, hey, we're out of ones. Who's got to make change right now? So that's my little gameplay thing that I wish I wish they had those, like, I can just see in my head a little double layer tracker where you can count up your sparks, and you know, I think that would work just fine. But that's my main negative. So very niche or small rather.
Yeah, and I have another non-gameplay related, nitpick, and it's just like setup and teardown. is a little bit lengthy for a game that's, you know, a fairly simple card game. Because you're picking, you know, 7, 8, or 9 of these decks, and you got to shuffle them up, and they come completely separated to start right in the box. So you have to do a really good job of shuffling them. So there's a little bit of setup, but it's mostly the teardown. Because after the fact, everybody's got their cities, you've got a discard pile, everything's completely mixed up. So then everybody has to spend like 10 minutes kind of separating out and getting all the citizens back into their decks so that you can put them back in the box. And especially if we played, because it's a game that's like really fun and plays in like 40 minutes or whatever, you know, 3 players. I think once we get the game on the table and set up, like 45 minutes, if you're, you know, not too slow playing. We wanted to play. We played multiple games. I think we played 3 in a row, and it felt like we were like between games. It's like 20 minutes between games, just like re-racking, you know, just trying to go and put those away and pull out the other ones or whatever. So another small nitpick that I think honestly is worth it. Like, it's worth it because the game is worth it. The game is fun. The gameplay.
Yeah. Same with the change making. I think it's a very minor complaint, but yeah, I agree with you. That can take some time here. My other, I guess, negative, I will say, it's not really a negative, is kind of something we already touched on. I don't feel like always the theme comes through as much as I wanted to, right? Like, you read that little background of like, oh, this meteor has fallen and these, you know, anthropomorphic animals, and the cards could almost be anything, right? Because it's really about the effects and things like that. And so I wish there was a little bit more there. But I also kind of have this like wondering if, like, you know, knowing what Thunderworks did with like the role player games, like, will there be other games in this universe, right? With this on this planet or something like that? Because I think that would be, I think it's ripe for some further development, right? Because, man, I don't think we've emphasized this enough, but the art is really just gorgeous, right? Like, it's just fun to look at, these characters.
Absolutely beautiful.
I would love to see more done in this world for sure. Especially with, what's the artist's name? I think it's, is it Gabriel? Diego Sa. He is, it's, I don't know. I love anthropomorphic animals, but this also doesn't feel like another Everdell cozy anthropomorphic animals
cozy
clone.
Or cutesy. Yeah, it has this otherworldly feel to it, and
lots of personality in
it's bright, it's gorgeous. I love it. I'm looking through them now, and it's just like beautiful. I'm such a huge fan, and like, you know, I showed my wife. I'm like, look at this. She's like, oh yeah, nice. And I'm like, come on, like, you're not appreciating. Appreciate more. You know, like my son too. I'm like, look, Charlie, look at these cool things. You know, I'm just looking for any sort of reaction. I got a better reaction for my kids for sure. But huge fan of the illustrations. I think it definitely adds, you know, a little bit more feel and theme to it than would otherwise be there, for sure.
Diego Sa, to me, he's starting to become like an artist that I want to like pay a little bit more attention to, because I don't know if you had a chance to see the other Thunderworks game that just came out this summer, Fliptoons, but he's also the artist for that, and they are completely different. Like, Fliptoons is, you know, 1930s rubber band cartoon art style, and this is these beautiful painterly, like, realistic animal pieces with these bright colors. Totally different styles, but both really work for the games that they are playing. So he's someone that I'm like, I want to see what else he's done, because I haven't looked into it yet. But like,
wow, stylistically completely different. Yeah,
totally different, right? Like, I think that's pretty cool too.
It is, yeah.
So, yeah,
very cool. I guess the last thing before we move on from this game is, like, what do you think is the core of the fun of this game? Like, what is the main thing that for you would make this game worthy of going to pick up and purchase outside of the art?
Yeah, I think this is a game. I don't know. It's hard to pick just one thing. So maybe my answer would change tomorrow. I love that there is, like, no downtime in this game, right? Like, whether it's because you're following other people or because you're trying to, like, think through what is the best choice to make here in my tableau that I have, right? It never feels like, I never feel like I'm stuck, and I never feel like I'm bored, either, right? And so it feels like it just hits that perfect. It's 45 minutes of game, and I am playing the entire time, rather than like it's an hour and a half of game, and I'm spending a lot of time waiting for people to kind of figure out what their choices are. Like you're always making choices. I guess if you have the wrong players, you could still get stuck being like, oh, how do I maximize every single possible point? But I don't think that this game is really built for that. It's built to just keep moving, and in the fact that it just keeps moving, it just keeps being fun. So that's what I love. One of the things I love about it.
Very cool. One of my favorite things that I look for in games is games that give me opportunities to feel smart and clever, and this game is chock full of that. And so that is probably the main thing. But I will also mention the variety in this game is off the charts, right? Like you've got 30 different citizens you can play with. And especially with this chart on the back of the rule book, it's so perfect to be able to like look at your game group for the night and be like, okay, this is a low interaction group. Let's do that. This is a high interaction group. We want to like get at each other's throats. Let's do that. Or this is an adaptable group that, very experienced gamers. Let's just do it randomly. Pull out, just shuffle the deck and pull out X amount out. So I just love the discovery of it, where like, especially since I've played so few games of this so far, I haven't really I've played 8 or 9 games, as I said, but that's like very little because the combinations, I don't know what the math is, but the combinations are huge, right? The amount of different combinations that you can have with 30 different citizens. I really enjoying the like discovery of the puzzle of each game and being like, okay, I'm looking at these characters, and I even recommend that you don't kind of study the characters before you put them on the table. Like put those cards away. There's a selection stack, right, that just has that you use to like shuffle and be like, okay, we're playing with the outcast, the traitor, the judge, whatever. Once you've picked who you're picking, put them aside, shuffle the deck and just play, and you really have that like fun of discovering what each of the characters do. And the first couple of rounds are pretty slow because people are reading cards and stuff, but like as soon as you get to like the mid game, people have their strategies, they know exactly what they want, and it's just flying, and you're at that point, you're just like, becomes very tactical, and you're just figuring out that puzzle of like, I have these citizens to work with, what do I do? And as I said, that kind of develops into a situation where I have like tons of opportunities to be like, oh, I'm going to do this on my turn and it's going to be epic. So that's what I would say is the variety and the figuring out of the puzzle of each different game that you play.
Yeah, when I say I hope they come out with expansions, it's mostly just because I'm greedy. There is a ton of gameplay in this box.
Oh, for sure.
I think that cannot be understated, right? Like if you're someone who's looking for like, well, what's a game I can play pretty regularly for a while? The rules are so easy. Like, you asked me what the rules on the spot, like, hey, can you tell me the rules? And I'm like, oh yeah, I can pretty much explain all the rules, right? Like it's not the kind of game that you're like, oh, I got to read the rule book again because I haven't played this for a month or whatever. Like it's just, there's a ton there that you're not going to get tired of. So yeah, for sure.
So what's your score?
I think this is an 8.5, right? Which is, for me, that's a pretty high score. I think the last episode I was on, Forest Shuffle, I may have given it something similar. But these are two games that like, they're not going anywhere in my collection, right? And so, Citizens of the Spark, like, as someone who reviews games, and I frequently get sent games, a lot of those games I play a few times, right, enough to be able to review them, and then it's like, okay, well, I only have so much space in my house. But this is one of those games that I don't foresee myself getting rid of. Like, it's going to stay. Like I said, there's a couple of those non-gameplay things that I was like, I wish this could be a little bit different so it's not totally perfect, right? Wish the theme was a little bit stronger, the change making was a little bit easier or whatever. But like, those are minor. Like, this is a winner for me, and it's one that I, as you know, I was excited to talk about it a month and a half ago. I'm excited to talk about it again today. I got a friend coming over this weekend, and we've all been saying how tired we are right now. He's like, well, we don't have to play a game or anything. We can just do some dinner or whatever. It's like, no, it might be Citizens of the Spark. Like, that's perfect for that kind of, like, a good hour of fun, and then move on to something else. I really like this.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. 8.5. Might have been a touch higher if I hadn't had that one weird experience that kind of like that was my second game. So that kind of scared me in that moment to be like, oh, okay, like, does this game just like fail like that often? But I haven't had that experience since, playing like, 6 or 7 more times. And so other than that, I've had nothing but great experiences playing this game, and everybody that I've showed it has fallen in love with it right away. So yeah, I'm right there with you. 8.5. Not quite a perfect game, but like a game that'll again stay in my collection for a really long time. And I'm right there with you. Like in the last year since I've started this podcast, like I'm constantly playing new games. I play it, X amount of times to make sure that I'm comfortable talking about it. And then a good portion of those games just kind of get set aside because I have more games to kind of get into the brain so that I could talk about it on the next pod or whatever, right? And the Citizens of the Spark is one that's returned to the table over and over again, and it's getting requested by my game group every time we get together. So it's a hit for sure. Highly recommend it, and I could see it going higher as well than the 8.5 as I play it more and I discover it more. And I could see it being a situation where like you have your favorite sets or your favorite characters that you want to make sure you have in every game that you play or most games that you play. But I could also see it being a situation where like everybody's played this game a bunch of times, like let's just shuffle them up and see what we get and then figure out the puzzle, because that's, for me, that's where the fun is. Eight and a half all around.
I think last thing I'll say is this: I think it has the potential to be for Thunderworks an evergreen, right? Just one of those games that it's just cards, right? Like that's really all. There's a few tokens, there's a couple of plastic tokens or plastic pieces and things, but like I feel like if the audience can find it, like this is one that I think almost everybody's going to enjoy, unless you're someone who's like, I only like party games, or I only like super heavy Lacerda games, right? I don't see people not enjoying this game. So.
It does feel like a crowd pleaser for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that was Citizens of the Spark. Let's move on to our feature movie review of the episode. I'm really excited to talk about The Island of Dr. Moreau. So a shipwrecked man washes up on a mysterious island. Only, I guess he doesn't wash up, but he gets picked up in the middle of the ocean by a boat that's headed to a mysterious island, only to discover Marlon Brando draped in white robes, a nice bucket on his head, playing mad scientist with DNA with all these animals. So alongside a perpetually unhinged Val Kilmer, he's been busy turning animals into half-human hybrids that are somehow less terrifying than the production of this movie. David Thewlis is the kind of our main protagonist, and he stumbles through as our bewildered audience surrogate. And what should be a chilling tale of science gone wrong instead devolves into one of cinema's most legendary bizarre disasters, a movie where the behind-the-scenes drama is way more entertaining than anything in the actual movie. So The Island of Dr. Moreau was released in 1996, directed by John Frankenheimer, who is credited, but it was actually Richard Stanley who began the project as the director, and then he was replaced fairly early in the production. So we'll get into that. It stars Marlon Brando, Val Kilmer, David Thewlis, and Fairuza Balk, I guess is how you pronounce that.
I think that's right, yeah.
And it won a bunch of awards. They were Razzies though. So it won 2 Golden Raspberries for Worst Supporting Actor by Marlon Brando and Worst On-Screen Couple played by Brando and Kilmer. Not that they're a romantic couple, but a couple on screen, and I received a handful of other Razzie nominations, which makes a lot of sense to me. So the first question, did you watch the documentary that I recommended? Did you get a chance to
I did,
watch that?
and I had actually seen it before. I went to rate it in Letterboxd, and I was like, oh, I've watched this already, but somehow I have blocked it out of my mind, I'm sure from trauma, from watching this disaster of a film get made.
Oh my God.
Right.
It's funny because I mentioned The War of the Worlds earlier being like a movie that's so bad that it's good, and I think this falls in that territory as well. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this movie is a train wreck. but it is, I just couldn't look away. Like, I just had so much fun with it. It was a blast. And like, yeah, it's so wild. And just the choices that were made, and especially with the context. Actually, this time around, watch the documentary first. So for those of you who don't know, it's called Lost Souls. I'm going to get this right because the title of the documentary is like equally as funny as called Lost Soul. Oh, great. Now I can't. Oh, here it is. Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's The Island of Dr. Moreau. So I think they probably could have picked a better title for that. But yeah, so that is available to watch for free on Tubi. So Tubi is like a free streaming service that has ads. But definitely recommend going to check out Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, because the context of how everything went down and how they made this movie is equally as entertaining as the train wreck that actually ended up being the movie. So yeah, I'm glad that you watched the documentary as well, because it's like it's just as worthy of talking about as the actual movie, if not more so. But yeah, what a train wreck. Like, some of the stuff that stood out to me. So I guess maybe like plot wise, I will say after watching that documentary and remembering what this movie was all about, I remember the plot and everything being like a total mess. And watching it this time around, I was actually surprised at like the premise makes no sense. Okay. And the characters don't make a lot of sense, but plot wise, story wise, it was a lot. Like, I was able to follow character motivation, sort of made sense. Like it mostly held together as a movie. Despite it having these off the wall weird elements that just like are completely bewildering. And again, like you watch the movie and you're like, why would they ever do it that way? Why would they ever dress a character that way? Why would they ever have a character act in that way or whatever? And then the answers are all in that documentary. And basically it's because these three what's the word I'm looking for? Egomaniacal maniacs. Four even, because Richard Stanley is kind of a psycho as well. Val Kilmer, who's famously incredibly difficult to work with and was referred to as like a frat boy bully type of person on set. Marlon Brando, who's like completely apathetic to his whole world at that point, didn't give a shit about anybody or anything. He just wanted his paycheck and to show up and whatever, and fell in love with all these weird things and, demanded that things get done a certain way. It's like all these forces pulling in different directions made this movie the wildest, weirdest movie we'll ever see. And I'm not even talking about the human animal hybrids. I'm not even talking about that.
We got everybody, all these people in their makeups. We go trucking out to set. We're out sitting around, and we're sitting around, and we're sitting around. Nothing's happening. Finally, we corral the AD, and we're just like, what's happening? What's going on? And he's like, well, Marlon won't come out of his trailer till Val comes out of his trailer. And Val won't come out of his trailer till Marlon comes out of his trailer. And we're like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Sorry, I'm going off here, but I'll let you get your what were your general thoughts on this movie?
Well, I'm with you in the idea that like this was more coherent than I thought it was going to be. Like remembering the chaos around it, and things like that. I had forgotten. I don't always understand character motivations in this film, but like the plot through lines, like they made sense, right?
Yeah.
They work through. But it's just the, like, as you said, we get no explanation for why Marlon Brando wants to be followed around by the world's smallest man in matching costumes, which of course becomes the mini-me joke, right, over the next 30 years that we all know. But like, why did he want to do it? Because Marlon Brando said, I want to do it, and they said, sure, Marlon Brando, as long as you'll film, you can do that, right? Like, there's just things like that all throughout that it's just like, nobody could say no or did say no, right, to these huge egos. And so what results is just like absurdity on screen, right? And sometimes in ways that like make sense character-wise, right? And sometimes in ways that I'm like, why? Why is this happening right now, right? I don't know. There are some things that I think are done like better than I thought they would be, right? The it's the 1996 film, right? I think so. It's probably shooting in 94, 95, and I think the makeup is interesting, right? The character makeup for the animal men it's not always good, but I think for the time period,
mostly it really works. Good. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think there are some actors who are really trying to work with this material and to work in this chaotic space. I think Fairuza Balk is like doing good stuff here, right? Yep. Like she's working hard to like actually have a character, right? And then Marlon Brando is just doing whatever the hell he wants to do, right? And just like absolutely insane. And I feel like Val Kilmer, I don't know what he's doing exactly in this film. Like Val Kilmer is a good actor, and there are moments where it's good, and there are moments where it's like this man does not want to be involved in any of this, and is giving us the most like flat version of this character that he could, right? Yeah. So there are things that I think work better than I as you said, than I remembered them working and things like that. But like, it's just so like there's even a point at which Marlon Brando, I don't know if this line was in the original script or not, but it felt like something that is just like, yeah, we don't care that much. Where Douglas is like talking to him for the first time about what he's doing on the island and things, and he says something like, I can't condense 17 years of experiments into 17 minutes, so here's one sentence, right? So it's like, we're not really going to try and explain all this, but like, here's something that will tide you over until we get to the next scene of utter absurdity here. Yeah, and that's a pretty good synopsis for the whole movie, actually. It's just like, we're not going to bother explaining most things to you. You're just gonna have to go with it. Like, apparently he's been there for 17 years. Like, there is an army, like, it's not even like 100, like over 50 maybe closer to 70 animal human hybrids. Like, and we see at the beginning one being birthed. And so is this a situation where they, and again, not explained, they take a human and then inject them with human DNA and they morph? Do they create them in a lab and then they grow? Because all of the animals there appear to be more than 17 years old to me. And we get lab jars everywhere of various like malformed experiments. Yeah, like how this is actually working, never clearly defined. There's llamas in the operating room. Like, why? Jaguars. Who knows? They're just hanging out, right? Like, maybe if you're this great scientist, you don't keep all of the livestock in the same room you're doing surgery, but why not, right? I guess it's an image, so there you go. Right. I think ultimately, like, if I had to distill it down to why all these decisions were made and why Marlon Brando ended up calling a lot of the shots around his character and his, character motivations and all that, and is that he barely showed up at all, right? And so he had agreed to do this, and Marlon Brando being attached to it is the whole reason why this project got greenlit in the first place. When Richard Stanley, the original director and creative behind this, was kind of like pushing the project forward. And then so when you have a name like Marlon Brando, especially in 1996, he hadn't kind of gotten to the level of like we think about Marlon Brando's late career and we think of him in a certain way. I don't think he'd gotten to that point yet in 1994, 96, right? In the early 90s. So all that being said, like, he gets attached to this project, and that gave Richard Stanley a lot of power because he and Brando were kind of ended up being buddies. And Brando was saying, like, I'll do this, but I'm only working with Stanley. Like, I want Richard Stanley to be the director. Well, Stanley ends up like spiraling and making all kinds of weird decisions and barely showing up to meetings and is a complete train wreck himself.
And then so he ends up getting replaced. But so what I'm trying to get to here is that Brando is supposed to show up, doesn't show up. They wait a week. They shoot other stuff. They kind of try to do their exterior stuff and stuff without Brando. He's not in it that much anyways, or maybe he's not in it that much because of this.
Right.
But yeah, so a week later, after he's supposed to show up on set, he shows up. And then the day that they're supposed to start shooting, everybody's ready. It's 9 a.m. They're doing their makeup. They're prepared, whatever. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he comes out of his trailer with white face and all these like weird makeup and weird, dress or whatever, and they're like running out of time for the day and whatever. So what I'm getting to is that like they're so I think they were so infatuated with the fact that Brando was going to be in this, and they were so scared to lose him that they were just like, sure, what do you want? What do you want to do? Okay, like, and then when he spoke, it was just like, okay, we're going to do it. And they even said in the documentary that John Frankenheimer, who was the kind of director that replaced Richard Stanley, was kind of like this militaristic, old school director, and he was barking at everybody and yelling at everybody and wanted things done on time and wanted things done a certain way. And then Brando shows up and he turns into like a puppy dog because he's like infatuated by the fact that Brando's there, and basically just folds and does everything that Brando wants to do. So it's Brando that decided that he wanted the littlest person in the world to be his mini-me and dress the same way. It's Brando that decided that his character was going to be like allergic to the sun and the heat and would have to be like covered in shade and covered in white paint and sunscreen and have an ice bucket on his head. Like all that stuff is Brando.
He said, this is complete insanity here. And I have to tell you, I've dealt with some very, very difficult actors in my life, but I have never, ever dealt with somebody like Marlon Brando. He said, we're driving, and he stops the car and says, let's fuck Bob Shea. And I said, this is John saying to me, I said, well, why? He seems like a pretty nice guy. Why should we do that? He said, well, he doesn't know what he's doing. And I think what we should do is just close down the production, and you and I are going to rewrite the script, and we'll spend 6 or 8 weeks rewriting it, because I have some ideas about how Dr. Moreau should be wearing a hat all the time, and at the end of the movie takes off his hat and he's actually a dolphin. So then I knew we were in serious bad shape.
He also famously would not learn his lines, refused to learn his lines. So he had an earpiece in a lot of the times, and it was some sort of assistant that was feeding him lines as they were kind of acting. So yeah, I think that between that and Val Kilmer having a similar sort of attitude of like, I'm, king of the world and I want this done a certain way and whatever. And, Frankenheimer didn't even want to do this project. He was just kind of like in director jail, I guess. He had kind of a couple of failures, and they just needed somebody to come and do this. And so he was like, fine. He went and did it. And then I guess all these weird egos and weird motivations turned into this like wild story.
Well, and what's interesting in part about that is like Brando really had some tragedy in his life, right? Like his daughter had committed suicide not long before and things like that. And so there's a sense in which like I can feel very sympathetic for this person who's like, this, none of this matters anyway, right? Which is literally, according to Firouzja Balk, what he says to her, like, when she asked to rehearse, right? He's like, no, none of this matters. You're getting paid, I'm getting paid. Like, why do we care? And yet at the same time, he is compelling to watch on screen, right? Yeah. Partly because of that chaos that you just don't know what he's going to be wearing next or doing next or saying next, right? It's so bizarre. And then, coupled with that, as you said, there's Val Kilmer, who I feel like his presence in the film sort of mimics the way he's described being on set, right? Where he's this like kind of malicious presence who is also kind of enjoying watching everybody squirm and be uncomfortable and suffer and like all those sorts of things, and finds himself being like, wants to figure out how to get himself on top through all of this. And so there's this weird way in which like the dynamics on the screen in some ways mimic the dynamics that are happening on the set, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think towards the end of the film, you know, when Kilmer is doing this Marlon Brando impression, basically towards the second half, like literally the same costume. What was happening there, right? Other than this is the ego of someone who's like, well, I can do what the most famous actor in the world is doing, also, right? So I don't know. It's just so strange, this whole film, and the behind. I mean, we haven't even talked about like really Richard Stanley's arc where he returns to set at some point later on, right?
Yeah, so Richard Stanley, this is fascinating too. So he made a couple of like really low budget indie genre films that had like cool style, and I haven't seen or even heard of them before watching this documentary. But he had a little bit of juice, right? Like he was seen as a little bit of an auteur coming, and that's sort of how he got this project. But he's a little bit of a weirdo and a little bit of a strange dude, and you know, he's in the documentary. Like he agreed to be in the documentary, talk about his whole experience, which I think is.
I mean, Matt, I gotta jump in here. A little bit is being generous, right? A little bit of a weirdo is being generous, right? Like
he's a lot of.
This is a man who, in his meeting with Marlon Brando, paid a warlock to perform a ritual while he was meeting, so that the meeting would go well, right? Like, yeah. A little bit of a weirdo is not quite cutting it.
Totally genuine when he's like, yes. Well, I was acquainted with Dr. So-and-so, who's a warlock, and you know, one of the best in the world, and he's like saying this in earnest, right? And he's like, so I had him prepare, I forget what I'm paraphrasing, but like a ritual and blah blah blah, and to make sure that this meeting would go well, and that I would have something like he would have the power or the juice to like make this movie and see it through. Right, for the movie to go well. And then he goes on, and this is all through Richard Stanley speaking, okay? So like take it with a grain of salt, but this is what he's saying. So he says he goes to this meeting with Marlon Brando in New Line. I think it's New Line Cinema. That's the studio. They send one of their people with him, this woman, and something about the air conditioning or the temperature or something in the house. And they said, like, she said, like, oh, if this keeps up, I'm going to fall asleep. Well, sure enough, apparently 10 minutes later, she's passed out and not involved in any of the meeting. And Brando and Stanley end up getting this great relationship. And Brando ends up basically basically giving the power to Richard Stanley to say, like, I'm going to make this movie, but I'm attached to this guy. And then later in the documentary, when things start to fall apart, there's a hurricane, the meetings aren't going well, the production's not going well, the whole set gets destroyed by the hurricane and the rain, you know, anyways, nothing's going well, and they decide that they're gonna like let go of Richard Stanley and fire him and replace him. And he's talking about, at that moment in the documentary, talking about how this warlock had some sort of health issue and ended up in the hospital with a dislocated hip and flesh-eating disease. And so the spell eroded, and that's what caused all of this madness to happen on set and for him to lose his job. And in comes, you know, John Frankenheimer. So, you know, and then when John, in the part of the documentary, when Frankenheimer gets hired, we meet kind of a couple of new people that were involved from that point on. And one of the most fascinating parts, I thought, was the I don't know what his role was, but it had something to do with the set and the location and whatnot. And as an actual professional who's like showing up to keep a production on the rails, and this is being shot in Australia, in the middle of nowhere in the jungle, he's like, okay, where is this place? And because they're shooting in a tropical place and whatever, he brings up a rain map, and he's like, he's a pro, right? He's like putting all his tools and deciding, and he's looking at this like map of the average rainfall in Australia, and it's like all shaded in different colors. And then the one little point that has like this massive amount of rain every year, the most in all of Australia, is exactly the place where they decided to shoot this movie because it had a cool view of a mountain. That was like the whole thing. And then the
Which
guy,
I think he says, like, you can't even see the mountain.
We're too close to it. So funny. Oh man, the documentary, I swear, is just as entertaining as the movie.
Though I will say, those early scenes on the island when it is like raining so hard and things on the exteriors, and you know the compound that Moreau has kind of a lot of like openness to it, right? Like, you know, courtyards and things like that. And it does make it very evocative, right? With all that rain pouring down around them as he's like touring through it. Though I will also note, for some reason in that shoes, Douglas, David Thewlis's character, is it David Thewlis? Is that right? I wrote it down.
Yeah,
it is
David Thewlis, yeah.
He's walking around barefoot for no discernible reason, and like, the sets do not look like that place I would want to be walking around barefoot necessarily. Yeah. But like it is evocative, right? It does create this like sense of threat, right? With all that rain coming in and you know the threatening natural world and that kind of stuff. Like some of that could really work. It's just that they didn't plan for it. You know what I mean? They hadn't done the research to make the choice. It's just what happened. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, and you're right. Like later in the documentary, so they fire Richard Stanley, and because he's like seems to be a little bit of a not a threat, but he's like he's on the edge of insanity. Like he's spiraling and he's not doing well mental health wise and whatever. And so one of the like you know, PAs or whatever gets told to like drive him to the airport and make sure he gets on the plane. Well, he drives him to the airport. He doesn't watch him necessarily get on the plane. You know, come to find out, he never got on the plane, and he was sort of a missing person. They were wondering where he was. Like he never went to the States, never went back to the States, and wasn't seen again. You know, in Australia for a little while they were shooting, and then for some reason, I forget exactly how it happened, but he gets invited back to the set by extras, I guess, right? Like the group of extras that were hired to like be all the animals and stuff. And so he just shows up.
Can I jump in here for just a second? Because this is like one of my favorite lines is that the extras hear about this guy. They're like partying or whatever, and they hear about this guy who's living a few miles away, who is someone had run into him, and he's just like mumbling, "Val Kilmer ruined my life." Right? And then one of the people who knew Richard Stanley was like, "Is that Richard Stanley?" Right? So he goes to find him and brings him to the set.
Exactly. He gets brought to the set, and then one of the other talking heads in the documentary goes on to say, like, there was this one guy who had this like dog mask on, and it was so hot, but he just refused to take off his dog mask, like between takes and stuff. He must have been cooking in there. Well, it turns out it was Richard Stanley, but I guess there was some sort of like legal agreement where he wasn't supposed to be within like X amount of kilometers of the set or whatever, because they were afraid he was going to like sabotage the production or whatever, because he was so upset from being fired. It turns out he showed up and apparently did a really good job as an extra. He's even credited on Letterboxd. I noticed he's credited. I have to go find this because it's actually really funny. But he's credited as an extra, as like melting dog face or something like that.
Yeah. He gets to be one of the creatures in his own film that he had been the visionary for earlier, right? Which is just an amazing personal arc to go on.
Here it is, uncredited as melting dog face. It's different on the app than it is on the website. I'll have to find it on the app. But anyways, wild that he would show up again like that. It's like, and then like not cause issues. He just like he just wanted to be there, I guess.
I guess it's like, you know, just watching your dreams burn a little bit. You don't have to burn it down more. It's already tragic. So.
Yeah, uncredited, and then it says here, melting bulldog is what he.
Melting bulldog.
Melting bulldog, played by Richard Stanley.
I love that in the documentary he still has that mask that he wore, right? And
He has
brings
it next to him or whatever.
Like, yep, this is it.
Yeah, really interesting, interesting character, man. This Richard Stanley.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like as much of a train wreck that this movie ended up being, I ended up liking it a lot more than I expected to. I thought it was going to be like a slog to get through, and I didn't remember. I probably watched this as a teenager, like 25 years ago or whatever. I don't remember having watched it as an adult, and certainly not recently. So I was expecting it to be way worse than it was. And though it's not great, and there's some really, really strange decisions, it's like if you remove Marlon Brando's stuff from this and maybe a little bit of Val Kilmer's stuff, like it mostly works pretty good. You could almost just replace those two, those two characters and some of the surrounding stuff that comes with them, including the little dude and the mini-me stuff and whatever. But
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think Brando is the most watchable person in this show. Like,
yeah. But he doesn't make the movie better. He makes it more watchable and more interesting. But like as a piece of art, it doesn't. I don't think he makes it better.
I don't know. I think you put someone else in there. I don't think they have that sort of. For wherever it came from, right? That like chaotic chaos, right?
Yeah, just this weird energy
with him. Yeah, to both to the performance and to the set in general, and so I wonder if it becomes a lot more of a bland movie with someone who's making more traditional choices in that role.
For sure, so, yeah. Maybe it's a movie that like does better at the box office and does okay and is just another movie that nobody ever talks about. It certainly doesn't become the legend that it is now, right? And it doesn't have this documentary made about it. So I agree. I think we're sort of saying the same thing. I'm glad he's in it. I would not prefer the movie to be this other version because it's so much fun to see the energy that he brings to the set. Val Kilmer, say less so, but sort of similar.
Yeah.
And then again, the impression that he does at the end where he's like acting like Marlon Brando. It's just like some weird choices that are ultimately not great on the art side of things, but insanely entertaining. Like I was entertained, no doubt.
Yeah. It's a thing you just don't see movies like this very often where it's like something has gone wrong here. I mean, we know obviously from the documentary and things what has gone wrong, but like I think without that context, you watch this, you're still like, what is happening? Like, what is driving this film? Because it's clearly not a coherent vision, right? Like it just seems to be, which maybe ties in with the plot of the film to some extent, right? The themes of the film, this idea of this descent into chaos, that does seem to be kind of mimicked both on screen and off. But like, I don't know. I don't think I'm as high on this one as you are, but I do see, I agree that like I wasn't looking away, right, when I was watching this. I wasn't like checking my phone and things like that. I was trying to understand and make sense of what I was watching on screen.
Yeah, the most fun train wreck I think I've ever seen. We were talking about War of the Worlds. Like, I don't think I'll ever revisit War of the Worlds. I'm glad I watched it. I had fun laughing at it and face palming basically most of the time. This was similar, but in a way that I was more entertained by the actual movie and by actually what was going on in the film. There's enough good stuff in there too, right? Like you said, I'm a huge fan. One of my all-time favorite movies is the original 1968 Planet of the Apes. So there's definitely, a little bit of that vibe coming through because of these like costumes, right? And this movie was made today, it would probably be mostly CG and it wouldn't feel as tangible, right? I found that not all of the costuming worked, but it mostly did, and I mostly enjoyed that stuff for sure.
I made a similar note. I think if this movie had been made 5 or 10 years later, right, like they're going to be like, oh, we'll just CG all this stuff, and it would not have the same impact. Yeah. I think sometimes, right, like those masks look often like masks, but they also look like horrific in a way that like really gets at what I think the filmmakers are going for there. And I think there's some really good like physical acting. We haven't mentioned the guy that plays Hyena, who I looked up because I was so kind of taken with his performance. He's kind of the main villain of the Beastmen, right? And he is just doing really interesting physical work. I don't think it all works, right? But he's committed to it, and he's bringing something to that role that I found really interesting and compelling. And so I looked him up. He sadly like died a year after this film was released and things. Because I was like, I wonder if he went on to do other stuff. There are a couple people that went on to bigger roles, right? I don't know if you saw this in the credits. Ron Perlman,
I did, yeah,
is the Sayer of the Law, and Temuera Morrison, who's Boba Fett, right? Is Azazello, who's one of the sons of Brando.
He was one of the sons.
Had more. Yeah.
Okay, because I did see him credited, and then I couldn't place him in the movie.
Yeah, he's the one I think that gives Hyena the guns in the first place. He's the kind of first to join up with him.
Right.
Yeah. So like, I wish that those characters. I feel like we see a somewhat of an arc with Hyena that pretty works pretty well. But there's so many other characters that like. I feel like if the thing hadn't gone off the rails, we may have seen better arcs for like Azazello, right? These three son characters that he has, they seem to all be distinct, and yet they just fade into the background and things like that. But like there are people who I think could have done and were trying to do good work on this film. It just got subsumed by the chaos. So
imagine like being casted on something like this, and then you're like. Richard Stanley, this up and coming auteur indie filmmakers getting a budget, and they've got Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando. Like, this is going to be amazing. And then you show up to this mess. It's wild. I would like to see a version of this where Richard Stanley, because he clearly had a vision. It would have been really great if they were able to, and I'm not sure if it's because of his personality or whatever, but it doesn't sound like they surrounded him with the supporting cast. And I don't mean supporting cast in terms of the actors. I mean that as in like the first assistant director and like a script supervisor and like people that were like there to make sure that everything around him went smoothly while he focused on his vision. Because clearly that was not the case.
He needed some people in his corner who could kind of be guiding him a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like, at least in his telling of things, and in, the other interviews they do, that like once people start realizing he's struggling, it becomes like distance ourselves more and more from him because this is getting bad, rather than like, let's support him and help him figure out. One of the things I really like about that documentary is in those first, 20 minutes when he's kind of explaining his ideas for the film, like that's a fantastic, interesting, creative film, right? Like the way he's thinking of Moreau from those early sketches and things, it's so different than the Marlon Brando version that we get, but like, I want to see that version of it. Like it seems compelling and interesting and wrestling with some issues, whereas I think a lot of the thematic stuff is pretty superficial in the version that we got. So
Richard Stanley, I guess, ended up living this super low-key life, living in the mountains among this like little strange community in the mountains or something. They mentioned it right at the very end of the documentary, but he just ends up living this super low-key life, and I'm not sure he ever made another movie, at least not up until the point where that documentary was made.
He did a few years ago, and it's really good. Did you see The Color Out of Space with Nick Cage?
No, he made that?
That is Richard Stanley, apparently.
No way.
Because that is a great Lovecraftian adaptation, and like I feel like that is one where he must have had people that were kind of supporting what he was trying to do there, because I think that movie really works super well.
I loved Color Out of Space.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong. I think you're looking it up right now. Maybe I misunderstood, but that's my understanding. At the very least, he wrote it, but I think he directed
by Richard Stanley, 2019. Amazing. Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy.
So,
and it's super weird because I swear to God, I'm not making this up. As I'm watching this movie, I'm like, this whole movie has Nicolas Cage energy. Like, this movie needed Nicolas Cage. And it's so weird that he ends up working with Nicolas Cage. It feels like it's actually such a perfect pairing, those two.
Yeah, it really does. Nicolas Cage instead of like Val Kilmer, or even instead of David Thewlis as being the person who's like horrified by all this stuff.
Yes.
Like I could see that really working.
There's a couple scenes where Thewlis is like on his own and he's like losing his mind because he cannot comprehend what is going on around him. Like that would be such a perfect Nick Cage, moment. Yeah,
absolutely. Cool. I think Thewlis is a really good actor, but those moments didn't really work for me. It just felt like out of the blue, he's now destroying this office, but Nick Cage would bring that building chaos so that those scenes feel like a little bit more earned, right?
Yeah.
than to me it did with Thewlis and things. Yeah. So, yeah.
Cool. So where did you land on this?
All right. Well, I just think it's still not a very good movie for all of that.
For sure.
Right? Like,
I agree.
As a film itself, I ended up giving this 2 stars, right? It is entertaining. I did enjoy my rewatch, right? And I didn't even resent at the end that I had to pay $4 to rent it because it's not streaming anywhere. I was like, all right, that was fine. That was worth the $4.
100%.
I took a ton of notes on there, many of which are just like, bizarre choices and things that were made here. Like, as you said earlier, I think it is worth a watch, partly as an artifact, right, of the time period, partly as a, like, exploration of, like, you can have all the talent in the world, and nobody's going to deny that Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando and John Frankenheimer aren't talented actors and filmmakers, right? And it still just doesn't work because they don't know how to make it work, and it just turns into something else instead, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the need for a guiding vision and a good script, which I don't think John Frankenheimer had. I think it was a job for him, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's worth a watch on that sense, but I think you may have kind of indicated this already. I think that the better watch is to watch the documentary, right? That's a real eye-opening experience, watch for like what it's like to make a movie when things go wrong.
I watched them back
the documentary.
To back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I watched the documentary and I immediately put the movie on, and I had a great time. Highly recommend that exact thing. Like, put like 3.5 hours of your time aside, and or watch them on back-to-back nights or something. But yeah, the documentary and then the movie, it's a great time. Saying all that, I'm right there with you. 2 stars, 2 out of 5 stars. I don't think it's a good movie. Is it an entertaining movie? Absolutely. Do I love it? Yes, but it's not a good movie. I said this on the last episode when we were talking about Elysium. I think because Letterboxd has this like rating system where you could put 1 out of 5 stars, but it also has this little heart icon that you can click if you like the movie, if you love the movie. Some people just put that and they don't put the stars. They just liked it or didn't like it, right? But I put it 2 stars with a heart because I thought it was a bad movie, but I had a great time.
I gave it 2 stars, no heart. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, I would not blame you at all.
And cool. Sometime, Matt, you got to have me back on this show for a movie that like I actually really like. The first couple episodes here I've been on have been like, yeah, that was not my favorite watch in the world.
You were on for Where the Wild Things Are?
Where the Wild Things Are. So both
weird like animal, like creature movies on an island.
There you go. Yes.
You're gonna have to try to stay on theme here and just do like
that's my
creature
niche.
on an
That's
island.
all I watch.
That's all you watch. That's funny. Yeah, I didn't even realize that. So yeah, okay. Well, maybe we'll let you pick the next one then. That's funny. Cool. Well, thanks, right. Joel. This was a blast. I'm so glad we decided to pick that movie because it's just like the perfect movie to talk about on a podcast. Like, it's just I knew it was going to be a blast, and it absolutely was. So thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. So, folks, if you're enjoying the podcast, take a few minutes to rate, review, and subscribe whatever platform you're listening on. You could follow us on Instagram at Dice Camera Action Pod and then you can send us any emails if you want to like give us a movie pairing or any suggestions, or if you have any feedback on some of the episodes that we've been watching. I want to know what you guys want out of this as well, right? Because I ultimately we're doing this for fun, but also to entertain and have a good time. So if there's anything you're liking or not liking, we want that feedback. So you can email us again at dicecameraactionpod@gmail.com. Thanks again, Joel. This was super fun, and we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt.